Hello friends, this video on cell cycle and cell division part 10 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So we will now talk about the next type of cell division, that is meiosis. Now some of the people pronounce it as meiosis or meiosis, whatever you call it. Now there might be some questions in your mind when you think of sexual reproduction. What do we need for sexual reproduction? We need the sex cells, that is the gametes. So gametes are required for sexual reproduction, we all know that. We also know that gametes are haploid cells, that is they have just one set of chromosomes. Now the question is, when we talked about mitosis, we said that mitosis occurs in all the diploid somatic cells of animals. But animals have haploid sex cells. So from where do these sex cells come? So how are these gametes formed? Now gametes are formed from diploid cells. How? Because gametes are diploid and we know all other body cells are diploid. So if gametes are formed from some other cell, that means it is formed from diploid cell. Now the question is, how is haploid cells formed from diploid cells? So that is a question, because mitosis doesn't ensure that conversion. So for that, meiosis came into picture. So what is meiosis? It is a specialized type of cell division which reduces the chromosome number by half. So if before division the chromosome number was 2n, so after division it becomes n. So that means diploid cells can get converted into haploid cells. So this is the main difference between mitosis and meiosis. In mitosis, the chromosome number is conserved. That is, if the chromosome number was 2n, it will be 2n. But here it becomes half. So here the parent cell is diploid, whereas the daughter cells are haploid. And this is how the male and female gametes are produced in animals. So if you have a parent cell which is diploid, it forms 4 daughter cells which are all haploid. So these are all haploid, but this is diploid. So there are two differences. In mitosis, the daughter cells were all diploid. Here the daughter cells are haploid. There 2 daughter cells were formed from one parent cell, and here 4 daughter cells are formed from one parent cell. So these are some of the differences between meiosis and mitosis. It occurs during gametogenesis in plant and animal cells. What is gametogenesis? The process of formation of gametes. Gametes are nothing but the sex cells. So when we talk about sex cells in human beings, we are talking about the sperm, which is the male sex cell, and the ovum, which is the female sex cell. Let us look at some of the important features of meiosis. Pairing and recombination of homologous chromosomes. Now in case of mitosis, what was the basic concept? Replicate and divide. So copying of DNA and then dividing the DNA into daughter cells. Here the key concept is pairing and recombination. So what do we mean by pairing and recombination? So here first what will happen, now since here you have 2 separate gametes, so the male sex cell will contribute something, female sex cell will contribute something, and then pairing between the two will happen, and recombination, that means sharing. Some part of the male will get exchanged with the female, some part of the female will get exchanged with the male. So that ways recombination will happen. Now we will understand this pairing and recombination in even more detail. So what happens is, let us suppose this is your parent cell. Now this has chromosomes like this. Let us suppose this chromosome is obtained from the father and this chromosome is obtained from the mother. So what happens? This will finally give rise to 4 haploid cells. So 4 haploid daughter cells will be formed as a result of meiosis. Now, when you look at the daughter cells, you will say they are somewhat like this. So if you look at it, you see that they are all like mixed. None of them purely resembles the father, none of them purely resembles the mother. So if you see, in all of them, one of the chromosome is like the father or the mother. That is, it is either white or it is red. So this is your white and these are your reds. But here if you see, recombination has occurred. So in one chromosome you have both the traits. That is the mixture of the traits. And that is why none of the daughter cells is exact copy of parent cell. This is very, very important here. Now just to take an example of human beings. Now take example of each one of us. People often say that you look very much similar to your dad, or I look very much similar to my mom. So we get such comments and we often see such similarities, but that doesn't mean that we look exactly similar to our parents. However, that happens in only certain exceptional cases, but otherwise there are some other differences. I mean, you can very easily distinguish between a father and a son, even though there are few similarities. That is because that son has some traits of his father, some traits of his mother, and some new traits which has come as a result of recombination, because the traits have got combined from both the parents and he has altogether got a new trait. So that is why none of the daughter cells produced in case of meiosis is exactly similar to the parent cell. So that is why we say pairing and recombination. So here also pairing is taking place. They are pairing up together, the chromosomes are pairing up, but recombination. So the traits are getting combined. Now, very similar to mitosis, meiosis is also divided into several stages. So, what are those different stages? Now, broadly, meiosis is divided into two cycles, that is meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Now, why do we have two cycles in meiosis? Because in meiosis, the chromosome number gets reduced. So, you start with a diploid cell, it gives 4 haploids. So in the first cycle of meiosis, it will give 2 haploid cells, and in the second cycle of meiosis, it will again, those 2 will give rise to 4 haploid cells. So the final will be 4 haploid cells. So that means it is divided into 2 phases, that is meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Now each of these meiosis 1 and meiosis 2 will have the subsequent stages within them. So when you talk about the cell cycle, that is the life cycle of a cell. So from where does the meiosis starts? Meiosis starts exactly after the synthesis phase. So first will be the first gap phase, this will be there. Synthesis phase will also be there when the DNA will replicate it, or when the DNA will duplicate itself. And after this S phase, what will happen? It will not enter into G2 phase. It will not get into the gap 2 phase. Instead, it will get into meiosis 1. So the first meiosis stage. After this, it will get into meiosis 2. That is the second phase of meiosis. Now, as a result of meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, what will be the result? What will be formed? Haploid cells will be formed. As I said, 4 haploid daughter cells will be formed. So haploid cells are formed. Now what will these haploid cells do? Most of these haploid cells are basically the gametes, the male and female gametes. So they will undergo fertilization. Right? The male gamete and the female gamete will fertilize or fuse together to form a zygote, which is again diploid. So after fertilization, this will again form diploid cells. And then what will happen to these diploid cells? These diploid cells will again get into G1. That means the diploid cells, once they are formed, They are like any other somatic cells of the body. So these diploid cells will undergo the metabolic processes, they will grow, they will become mature. So they are basically in the G1 phase, gap 1 phase. After that again the synthesis phase will come, and then now they are diploid cells. Therefore after this synthesis phase, they can either go to mitotic cycle through the process of mitosis, or they can go through meiosis. So that is their choice. So mitosis and meiosis, they are related to each other, because meiosis forms the haploid cells which fertilize later to form diploid cells, and the diploid cells again undergo multiple division to form more and more diploid cells. So that is how mitosis and meiosis are related, but they both do not fall in the same cycle. So meiosis is like after the S phase. After S phase, either it will go through G2 and then mitotic phase, or it will go directly to meiosis phase. So I hope this is clear that where exactly in the life cycle of a cell mitosis and meiosis fits in. So now we will see what are the different stages involved in each of these cycles. So let us talk about meiosis 1. Meiosis 1 will have 4 stages again. The name of the stages are very similar to what we have studied in mitosis. So it will have prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1 and telophase 1. So these are the 4 stages of meiosis 1. Similarly, meiosis 2 will again have steps like prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2 and telophase 2. So what we are going to do is we are going to talk about each of these steps in detail, and we'll see how the entire process of cell division or meiosis will take place. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.